Good afternoon, happy Memorial Day, and welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Last month, we brought you the story of Connected, a documentary about how Vermonters banded together to bring broadband internet access to rural areas. Today, we're going to air the film in its entirety. Much like a country road, it contains a lot of twists and turns, dead ends, and blind corners. Connected documents a 17-year journey towards equity thanks to the resilience and ingenuity of Vermont communities. From Well-Told Films, this is Connected.
From an agricultural standpoint, the benefit of high-speed internet doesn't have anything to do with actually milking cows or growing crops. When I was a kid, it was just like there were farms everywhere. Now we're the last farm in Stratford. As the farming community gets smaller and smaller, fewer farms further and further spread apart. With the internet, it gives us connection to other farmers.
I live on a dirt road and we have 3 kids and 2 dogs and 30 chickens, and my husband and I are always on the go. We had very little access to the internet actually. We could really only run like 2 or 3 devices at a time. One of the only solutions we could come up with was to rent office space, to split up and keep one child at home and bring one child to work. Hello?
I was consulting with media companies in New York, working remotely up here, and I had a cable internet connection at my house at that point in time. I was trying to upload 10 gigabytes of data for a customer project that was due, and about 8 hours into the upload, it failed, and it was 95% complete.
Bringing broadband in Vermont is a matter of letting residents of rural areas participate in this century's economy.
As you can see, this is the end of the Class 3 road and the beginning of the Class 4 road. Town doesn't plow past the driveway here. The town plow makes a nice big pile of snow in the middle of the road, and that's it for the season. If anybody shows up here, they're either friends of ours or they're badly lost. We've been living in this place for a long time. And when we first moved in here, the only options in all of this area was dial-up phone service using modems. The only thing it worked for was email. Incumbent carriers, anybody who's interested in making a big profit on internet, is just not going to build to a place like this. I mean, look at these beautiful hills. This is an awesome place, but there's not a lot of people here. They were just like, dude, you're at the end of a dirt road. Well, we're never going to run anything up to you.
We are digging right now to put some underground conduit in because this pole is very busy. This was a surprise once the crews got here and looked at it. To replace that and make it bigger would probably cost $20,000. So this was the far cheaper route here.
One of the challenges of solving the problem of connectivity in rural areas is it's not very profitable for market-based companies, your Verizons, your AT&Ts, to go in and serve such a small number of residents. When you've got to run a cable line or a fiber line to a rural area, you might only pass a few dozen homes, and all that infrastructure is very expensive.
The businesses that have charge of that infrastructure and those services were not offering things that were available in, say, big cities or parts of the United States that are far more populated.
The telephone company, for their broadband product, would only build to where there was a density, often 25 to a mile, 20 to a mile.
We're way down. We're like at 10 residences per mile.
Commercial bodies weren't going to bother. In fact, they were actively disinterested.
I had a woman, she does not have the use of her hands, and she has a disabled child at home, and her telephone went out, and she had just had stomach surgery. She is 40 minutes away from the hospital, 25 to 30 minutes away from an ambulance. And so I started telling the telecommunications CEO. And I got to the end of that story, and he said to me, "Why doesn't she move? Why doesn't she move?" And I was so shocked. You know, the only thing I could say was, don't ever say that again. But that lit a fire for me.
Vermonters felt like they were being left behind by these for-profit providers. That was really the message to these communities, that no one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself and get organized.
There were techies who were living out in the woods and could see what was coming and could see that where they had chosen to live, the cable companies weren't going to get there.
If you live in a small Vermont town, you are intimately familiar with the idea that nothing gets done unless the citizens lean into it. Our towns meet every year in March still for what we call Town Meeting Day. It is a way of governing ourselves that we depend on.
I stood up at the town meeting and said, hey, maybe we can address our lack of internet if we get together as a community. When I sat down, everybody started applauding me. And we discovered that various other towns had had similar town meetings, similar experiences, and had the same problem that we had. Maybe we can solve this through multiple towns.
I think everyone realized, yeah, we're not going to get internet here if we just sit back and wait for it. That we're going to have to kind of band together to make it happen.
The entire country is dealing with these rural issues. But Vermont has an especially difficult challenge of getting people connected because we're mountainous, so wireless doesn't work because it doesn't get through the hills. And we're more than 80% forested, so the signals have a hard time getting through foliage.
I come from a wireless background. I knew that that would not work with the topography that we have. It never covers everybody, and it runs out of steam pretty quickly in terms of the amount of bandwidth and speed that it can provide.
So at that point in time, the conversation shifted to the possibility of building fiber in rural areas.
We are what we call box yard, which is our outdoor storage area. This is where we keep reels of fiber and conduit and strand. Right here, these are the different strands within this sheath. So this is actually 144 strands of glass in one of these. And you can actually expose this glass. There it is, just like that. That's how thin just one strand of fiber is.
Forgive me for being a recovering engineer, but I've got to talk about the physics. A fiber the size of the human hair can carry at least 3,000 times what one cable can. And as they're splitting the light and fiber, they've really realized it's almost infinite the amount of data you can get down a piece of fiber.
The fiber technology that we were proposing would be future-proof. In other words, we would do it once and then there wouldn't need to be upgrades.
This is what makes the magic happen.
You're not transmitting your information any longer by electricity. You are transmitting it by a light wave that is passed at the speed of light through this fiber. That's why generally your connection through fiber will be more dependable than electrical signal, because electrical signal can be subject to interference.
Green is always good and red is bad, so see, we have nothing but green light, so that's always a good thing.
My father moved here from Massachusetts and started out not intending to be a farmer. He was going to be an artist and a poet and live in an old farmhouse in Vermont, and sort of fell into agriculture by growing his own food. When my dad bought the original farmhouse, the power was not pulled, so he called the electric co-op and they said, yep, we'll be out and we'll put power in.
You know, forgive my bias, but you know, I think that the electrification of rural America was one of humankind's greatest feat. Oh my gosh, look at that. That was a substation. There's some line workers. Oh, cows. So when the co-op first ran electricity, they ran it to the milking powers of the barn. It was for keeping the milk cool. Then people figure, well, this works in the house too. The significance of cows is that's where it all started.
Suddenly farmers could produce more. They could make more money. They could distribute their product better.
Electricity became very important for farmers to do all sorts of things. And a lot of electrical utilities covered the denser areas and did not cover the poorer areas.
Today, the digital divide is the economic divide. If you look at people who are on the other side of the digital divide, they're more than double the number of low income as people that are connected today. It really has become one of the most important equity issues of the day.
Our efforts to prove that fiber to the home was viable in rural areas depended on our pre-registration efforts. And that was modeled after what happened in Vermont with electricity. Different areas of the state formed rural cooperatives, and they would have sign-up efforts at town meetings or town halls or general stores. And we did exactly the same thing. I think we had about 1,000 people signed up without even being an organized entity because the demand for it was that great.
Everybody wanted it, we just weren't sure how to pay for it.
We spent the spring and early summer of 2008 to develop a bond issue to be marketed in the municipal bond market to the kinds of people who invest in stadium bonds and other revenue bond type enterprises.
Everything is in place, and we are ready to break open the champagne because we are about to raise a lot of money in the municipal bond market. And then I wake up on September 16th and Lehman Brothers has gone bust. The credit markets fail, everything freezes, we're dead. There is no such thing as a municipal bond market. It simply evaporated overnight. I never recall anyone saying, do we want to quit? It was always, this didn't work, what are we going to do instead?
The idea was that we should do what Vermonters typically do. When people tell us it's impossible, we just do it ourselves.
We said, we can build out a fiber network in one area of one community using private friends and family financing. What the hell, we'll have bake sales.
We basically went door to door selling promissory notes. And in that process, we raised $7.5 million. And that's the thing that got us started.
Stratford was one of the earlier towns to get EC fiber. We are in contact with our distributors and the stores almost exclusively electronically now. Now we can monitor the temperature in our tanks from anywhere. I was just out in Colorado and get an alert in the morning that tells me that the bulk tank is warmer than it should be. I knew that before the people who were here milking the cows did.
Broadband communication is not simply about entertainment. The commercial entities emphasize the download speed. That is the speed with which data can be delivered to you. We emphasize upload speed as well. An emphasis on download speed is an emphasis on entertainment delivery. Now, entertainment delivery makes profits, but it doesn't make profits for the local economy. It makes profits for the shareholders of communication entities.
You wouldn't normally look at this elder care home with the historic building and think, boy, they really need high-speed internet. But once you come in the doors and you see the population and you go, yeah, no, they do need that.
This right here is how I use the internet. It's, I text a lot.
The residents use the internet primarily for teleconferencing with their doctors and with their families.
In many ways, it's just like sitting around the dinner table and talking.
Being able to interface with people outside of your small pod of fellow residents is huge. You know, it allows you a connection to the greater world.
And what we did was we have a fiber cable right here. That's that orange cable right there. It runs from here all the way back. It connects this cabin to the rest of the world. Friends and people come by here, and even visitors from out of town come by here, and they're always surprised that I have gigabit internet fiber in my cabin. And I'm not surprised about that at all. You're damn right there's going to be internet here.
In 2019, the state legislature realized, wait a second, EC Fiber has figured out a solution to this problem. We need more EC Fibers in the state.
We've got a great model in the state of Vermont at this point. How do we replicate that throughout the rest of the state?
CUD stands for Communications Union District. They are structured like a town government, but it is an entity that is specifically formed to serve a region, maybe a couple dozen towns, and drive connectivity, drive fiber internet service into the most rural parts of those towns.
I frankly have long suspected that there was a tongue-in-cheek there, because CUD does seem to be related to Vermont agriculture, doesn't it?
The response was incredible throughout the state. People coming together to start forming these CUDs.
CV Fiber is a communications union district in central Vermont. The build-out process we have is very long. We deal with swamps, we deal with mountains. You may not be able to truck in, you have to use four-wheelers, you have to use side-by-sides. So it takes a long time.
There's this joke, almost a joke, that you can't get there from here. And that's true with fiber as well. So we have to be creative in how we lay our lines.
So what they're going to do is they're going to lash it, which is a thin wire, and it basically just wraps around that strand. So this is one of the challenges that takes a lot of time.
Pretty sure the lash is stuck in the tree.
Gets frustrating dealing with this sort of area. And most of what we build is going to be like this. There's no way around it. That's why nobody builds these.
Ready?
We're all in Vermont used to thinking about town boundaries. However, phone poles have no idea they're going across a town boundary. DV Fiber got its name because the originating towns were communities in the Deerfield River Valley of Vermont.
They are hill towns for the most part. Marlboro, for example, my town is 90 to 95% unserved. We decided that the best path was to form a communications union district.
Of course, that's March of 2020, and just as COVID is hitting, when they couldn't gather in person and had to meet virtually.
All of these volunteers who came together, and most all of us were sitting at connections that didn't work.
Every single meeting reinforces our experience that we could do better.
"You're frozen" is one of our favorite catchphrases.
Every CUD has a different personality. Different communities have different degrees of wanting to work with others around the state or thinking that this is what's best for our community.
We are in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom, also known as the NEK. Very beautiful, but also has a lot of economic challenges to overcome. We have sections of road where you're driving for 10 miles at a time where you're not going to see a single house. In an area that is more conservative than a lot of other places, and in some cases not supportive of kind of government control of entities. They had seen what private providers had fallen short on time and time again and believed in their community members to solve this problem.
With the model of EC Fiber, efforts sprung up in central Vermont with CV Fiber, and in the Northeast Kingdom with NEK Broadband, in the Deerfield Valley down in Windham County, in the Southern Vermont CUD in Bennington County, in Rutland County, Addison County, Northwest, Lamoille, last year in Chittenden County, all across the state.
People who lived in rural areas, the frustration that they felt was palpable. People felt as though they were second-class citizens. They felt as though rural areas had been left behind. They felt extremely frustrated, but also now hopeful that there would be a change.
We are here at the Calais Town Hall in a neighborhood that previously was unserved or underserved.
Building community to solve a problem. That is the Vermont way. That's why I like calling them community broadband networks. These aren't just fiber networks. These are community networks. They're building community. They're building capital and resources and new opportunities for communities. And the community is doing it themselves.
3, 2, 1.
Vermont is quite exceptional in what we're trying to do. We're the only state in the union that's getting every address connected to fiber optic internet.
There is a lot more to be done, both on the construction phase. There's more funds to raise. The federal government's providing some additional funding via the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Act, BEAD, but that, like any federal funding, comes with strings attached. And then even once this network is built, we're not done. We talk a lot about remote work, education, telehealth. No, this is about equity. This is about being able to participate in your community.
I think it's really important as we think about building out broadband in Vermont that we don't leave anyone behind. And people with disabilities are often left behind. They are the largest community of people that experience significant disparities in employment, health, housing, all of those big important factors in life, right? So it's really important that we think about that community when we're building out our broadband.
The day when the White River Junction hub would officially go into service.
By its trade name, EC Fiber.
Finally, after all this time, after all this work, I wanted to make sure that a lot of the people who were involved originally, that they had an opportunity to be recognized.
It's the last piece of an incredible journey and an incredible vision and 17 years of hard work by so many different people.
I wanted to have a band. I wanted it to be kind of a real Americana type event.
If we were going to depend on the big telecommunication companies to get us internet, we'd be waiting until our grandchildren had grandchildren.
It's been the highlight of my communications career because, I earned a good amount of money in my for-profit part of it, but this has been much more gratifying because it really has had an impact.
It is such a treat to be here today.
I spent a lot of time developing kind of a script for the day, and I wanted to make it, pretty snappy so that we would hold people's attention. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my script and I'm trying to give the speakers, okay, you've had your minute and a half, get off the stage.
And we're all set, and then the credit markets melt down. Just hold on, FX, I'm gonna finish up in a second, but you gotta give me time. All right.
But suddenly there was a change in the room. And the change was that people were silent, people were absorbed, people were hanging on every word. And After that, I only looked at the script to see who the next speaker was going to be that I was going to introduce, and I just let them tell their story. It just played out so beautifully.
But I just want to say that this moment is one of the happiest moments of my life. I went to that celebration, and boy, did I have a good time. It was a dream come true. It was awesome.
The EC Fiber was a success. It was a perfect, really, Vermont model of people getting things done that seemed impossible. But by putting many, many people together, they were able to be successful.
My high school vice principal, someone who works for one of the utilities, another person who's a teacher. These are the people that came together to say, okay, we're going to do it. I mean, it's really a testament to Vermonters, just in general. Makes me emotional to think about.
There really is no alternative if you want to live and raise a family and be a community in rural Vermont unless we do this together, because relying on private enterprise, they've already weighed in and said, no thank you folks, find some other place to live. Well, I want to live here. These hills are beautiful. Just look around. Why would I want to be anywhere else?